Welcome to Fulfilling This Belly Sting. A show dedicated to aligning a journey to a better mental health using the understandings of the ancient Norse. Join us each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Look at that.
Good morning and happy Wotan's Day to you. I hope this week is going just the way you hope and that all of your experiences lead to where you want to be. That relatable data that you can use every day to make sure that you obtain or maintain a better mental space. Today, as always, I want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed. If you haven't had a chance yet, please do so. Mash that button and be notified each and every morning, weekday morning, when a new show is released. Hopefully, one of these shows will offer you that nugget of intellect that can help you to accomplish great things and to beat back those negative feelings and those unwanted direction changes in your life to obtain or maintain a better mental space. Thank you for all of you on video and certainly on the audio podcast. We ask that you just promote and like, follow, subscribe, suggest to all of those, share out so that others may come to know this message and hopefully find that piece that works for them. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to my friends and family at New Reality TV. newrealitytv.com is a streaming channel dedicated to a plethora of perspectives within our spiritual journey. No more right, no more wrong than anything else. Just simple tools that we can use every day to help our spiritual journey move along. If you do find yourself in a place where you've got some extra coins, by all means, feel free to hit up our tip jar. The links are located throughout this video. For those of you who might be interested in me, my message, my teachings, and certainly my shows, whether they be pre-recorded or these live shows, you can check out all that information, including my life coaching service, which is available at norsewhispers.com. Please check it out. See if it's something that could maybe help you or someone you know. All right? I would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Today, we're talking about Wotan. Now, Wotan, of course, is the god Odin, simply recognized before really we historically we see the Norse come to be recognized as the Norsemen. So Wotan, simply Odin. But again, he's recognized earlier than we read about in the sagas and certainly the writings of those who wrote to help us to understand the Norse. He comes essentially from the Celts as they migrated north in through Germania. Now, a lot of people say, these are a lot of names. Why is it like that? Well, many times I think a lot of people forget about the time passage, right? So the Celts really fought the Roman Empire right around the turn of zero. So we were turning over a new leaf, so to speak. And the Celts were essentially escaping the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain today. And they would migrate north through Germania, across the Elbe River, ultimately winding up in the Jutland of Denmark. They would go further north as well into Norway and Sweden to establish those countries, and as far east as Iceland. So kind of up and around there. But through their migration through Germania, they recognized the god Wotan. Wotan, written in several stories and several retellings, particularly those third parties who witnessed, really witnessed the understandings of Wotan and his travels. So they were looking at it from an objective third party, and he really saw there was a couple of really key indicators about what would become recognized as Wotan. One of the first things that is recognized about Wotan is his claim to fame, if you will, of being the All-Father. He is the Almighty. He is the supreme god of the Asir. And he essentially, him and his brothers would help establish the realms, but then more importantly, he would begin to educate both all of the life forms within the realms, particularly himself. The All-Father was also known as the Traveler. He traveled far and wide. Most often than not, in the stories he's told about being in disguises and being an old man with a floppy hat. He's described as being raggedy and just kind of a traveling Wilbury, if you will. So he's moving around the realms and disarming in that he never came across as the warrior that we read about in the earlier times when him and William V would defeat Ymir to form the realms, particularly to form Midgard. We see him being a very warriorous king and very impatient. He was very demanding. And he would help establish the 9 realms that way. As we see him migrate more towards this name recognized later of Othin, we really recognize his journey into this thing called wisdom. Well, what is wisdom? We've talked about it before, but wisdom essentially is intellect or knowledge added to an experience. Whether that experience be first, second, third hand, matters not. What matters is that we can begin to connect multiple intellect pieces through this relationship. Super important because this kind of adds that rubber to the road, if you will, or the experience of living this intellect, whatever this intellect happened to be. So we really see Othin kind of going on these quests of wisdom. One story speaks of him donating his eye that he may drink from the well of Erd. Of course, the well of Erd being a reflection of all the wisdom or all the experiences, I should say, within the tree Yggdrasil. And this drink would then provide all of those experiences to Othin, where he would make the relationships within his mind to then become, to include that in his processing of wisdom. We also read about his ravens, Hugin and Mugin, who would travel around the world and all the realms, and they would report back to Othin that which they thought was of interest. And he would gather these experiences that the ravens had. He would gather those experiences through the energy of transmission, i.e., they would tell him all about their travels, and he would then process that. So it's really a quest for experience. And so how do we do that today? Well, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But ultimately, we need to understand the value of where these experiences are coming from. We mentioned that they're first, second, or third hand. So we can have these experiences. We simply have to reflect upon them and go, wow, I had that experience. This is what I got from that experience. I guess second and third hand, you're still gathering the experience because of our imagination. We can imagine this other individuals actually creating this experience or having this experience, and we can more or less sympathize, right? We can more or less kind of say, wow, so that's the experience they had, and this is what they saw, and this, how would that feel if I was doing the same thing? And then we kind of build up on that. And that's second and third hand. The idea that we're experiencing life or that we're accepting experiences is really what makes our wisdom that much larger. Which is why many times people say, oh, your beard is now white. You may be a little long in the tooth, they say. What does, that should give you some level of wisdom. Well, of course it does, because we've had our intellect and we've had experiences, many experiences. We've lived a long life. So this is kind of the idea that we're taking the intellect of a book or what mom and dad have told us, and we've lived it. And when we lived it, it kind of connected this higher form of relatability between these data points called wisdom. Now, many times we're in the hustle and bustle of the modern day world and we forget about wisdom. We're not using wisdom. We're using intellect and knowledge to get through our everyday. It's not until we reflect back on it that we can then begin to say, all right, that makes sense. Let's connect it. Okay, now it makes sense. We can begin to add some experiences to these intellect pieces to create wisdom. Now, I want to talk, when we come back from break, we're going to take a break here in a few minutes, but when I come back, I want to talk about how you can build experiences and wisdom every minute of every day. Sometimes we are very quick to kind of fire off at the hip. We gotta get a deadline. We gotta move. Gotta get low, get fast. Right? This reality of our experiences may or may not be beneficial to the overall structure of the wisdom within our mind. Remember, wisdom really is a table of interrelatability between different intellects. So I always take my example of wisdom as being like being a car mechanic, right? So we have tires and brakes and maybe engine guy and maybe tires and maybe body work and interior and electric. We have all these different individual schools of thought, but when we put it all together and they all work together in harmony, we have a working car. Car being the wisdom. Experiences are a part of that. So putting together, actually building the engine, building the car, putting it all together, all of those experiences go towards our wisdom. So you could assume then, or the analogy there would be, experiences would be like our assembly line, right? So we have all the different stations, and we're going to put together this car. But we're experiencing putting in the dashboard, putting in the carpeting, putting in the electric, putting in the engine, putting on the wheels, putting on the tires. All of these things we're going to experience, and that's going to build the car. So while the car may be a destination, it is not the destination. Have to remember, life goes on. In much the same way as when we have bad experiences and where maybe our emotions are not where we want to be, we can essentially, even those provide some level of education or interrelatability. Remember, interrelatability doesn't just mean those are the things we want. Those may be the things that we want to avoid. So there's a lot to kind of piece together within our mind. And remember, our experiences are coming in frame at a time. Frame. Sometimes we may get experiences in there that we don't want to have. But yet they will teach us what not way to go. In very much the same way that I'm sure I feel about the usage of heavy drugs, any drugs for that matter. I avoid it. Why? Because I have experiences that say, that's not the path we want to be on. We want to be on this other path that's more happy, that's more joyful, that's more harmonious, comfortable, this, that, and the other thing, right? So I want to be over here. So not only are our mistakes, or what we would conceive our mistakes, they can also be tools for learning, for path alteration. And that's super important when we talk about living. Part of living, remember, is to pass on our experiences so that our children, as an example, our children learn from our examples. So we say, hey, I did this stuff when I was a kid and it didn't work out. Is it going to work out for you? I don't know. But chances are pretty strong that it's probably not. And it's certainly not going to give you the output that you were really looking for. So, here's my experiences. It really comes down, and remember when we talked about the well of the self, it really talks, we speak about this level of authority that we're willing to give out to other people, that they may put their rocks in our well, right? Remember that? And this is where it lies. So, if I say something to my teenagers or 20-somethings, and I say, I did this exact thing. I was in this exact situation, and this is the thing I did. It didn't work out well. They have a choice. They can choose to say, you are my dad, and you've lived this long, so here's a rock. Or, I'm willing to give you, you can put a little rock, right? Put a little rock. But then one of their friends says the same thing. Because their friends are giving a higher level of authority, now their rock is a little bigger than mine. Ultimately, in the big scenario of things, both rocks may be touched during the energy processing through their well of the self. But nonetheless, now they have these different size rocks. as to values within their value system. All right. All right. As I mentioned, when we come back, I want to talk about how you can use this quest that Wotan demonstrated for us to continue a path to understanding how we gain wisdom and what is the advantage of wisdom. Why would we really need it when we have intellect and we have experiences? Why do we need this second level called wisdom? We'll talk a little bit about that when we come back from break. Before I do, I want to say hello or hi to Kasun Lee from Sri Lanka, who has joined us on our Facebook chat this morning, or YouTube chat. I can't tell. Anyway, not used to all the buttons and lights. So I'll be right back after a short message, and we'll talk about how to put the rubber on the road and actually make experiences work for you in building up your wisdom.
In the air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me. It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
newrealitytv.com.
Welcome back, and thank you for taking that quick break with us, and thank you so much for New Reality TV, a wonderful, wonderful plethora of perspectives that can help. Today we're talking about Wotan and his quest for wisdom. And what does that do for us? Well, let's first talk about what, as we mentioned, what wisdom is and what does it do for us? Well, wisdom, of course, is the combination of intellect and knowledge and experiences. Many times we connect these two to create a higher form or a more emotionally stable path forward. Now, when we think about having experiences, remember, experiences are going to come in through our sensory input, and they're going to be processed based on our mood. Mood is first, and so if we're in grumpy mood, we'll see those portions of the experience. If we're in a good mood, we'll see those portions of the experience. So, believe it or not, your mood can actually change what you see, what you experience, the world, the reality that you have. Many times, depending on our mood, we may miss those things in our lives that we want to have completely, simply overlook them. It happens quite a bit. Why? Because our brain is set to look for those things that we're not wanting. Yes, we do set our brains to do that. And we do that by having this inability to really draw in hope. Hope, of course, the energy that powers all. And hope is truly one of those energy sources that kind of infuses itself in almost everything we do, in almost every part of our experience in this reality. Hope is there. So our mood is going to set what we see, what we process, what we stuff down to now emotionally address. Soon as this image, which is manipulated, by the way, it's manipulated by your mood. So you're going to see just a portion of a scene. Okay. So if you take a picture, you're in a good mood, you're going to see that picture one way. If you're in a not good mood, why? Because your mood is changing what your brain is processing. Once it's done adjusting by the mood, we're going to drop down and we're going to hit the heart. The heart, or through this well of the self, my ancestors referred to it, through this well of the self, we're going to create the biochemistry within your body. This is the hormones and all the chemistry that your body creates. all based on your DNA. So your DNA builds these little injectors, if you will, by the heart that then inject into the bloodstream certain hormones. And it's really good at managing the dosage, right? So we say we inject ourselves, we'll say, with a good, happy hormone. Those hormones are going to roll through our DNA out to our bloodstream. Bloodstream is then going to pump it back to the brain. It's a very critical part because this is where we're connecting our emotional states to this experience. Super important because the emotional energy that's created may or may not be the original image at all. So we've already changed the image by our mood, right? So our mood's already changed it once. It's dropped into our heart now. And as we allow it to pass through the well of the self, we're going to see this further manipulation based on our value systems, our belief systems. It's going to change the image even further. Now, once it gets done with the well of the self, at the very bottom of the well of the self, it's going to be converted to biochemistry. These are the hormones that I'm referring to. And they're going to inject into our bloodstream. Bloodstream is going to carry it back to the brain where it's converted back to energy. It'll be converted back to this bioelectricity within the body or within the mind. The biochemistry is going to then be identified at the brain and categorized. It'll be kind of adjusted. I don't know if you remember my example, but essentially the brain kind of looks at the composition of the energy that it's, or the biochemistry it's just received. It's going to kind of look at this and go, all right, I look up in my recipe book that I've built throughout my lifetime and say, oh, I know what that is. That's happy, or that's sad, or that's mad, or that's glad. And whatever energy we decide on then is then attached to that. So this is where we can get into, we see the conversion process that's going to happen between the biochemistry and the bioelectricity. This process really has a whole show all to itself. But essentially, we are going to convert the signal we receive, the biochemistry we receive from the heart, and then we're going to add this recognition of some energy, some emotional state, which provides energy, additional energy to this converted energy from the heart. All of this comes together within our minds. Now, we've talked about it before, and it is certainly a critical piece to understand, is that when we are processing this energy, when we are converting the biochemistry, we're adding the other energy of an emotional state, we're adding those together, and we're bringing it back to an energy state. This could technically overrun the space at which we have to do this. It's only so big. My ancestors referred to this as the horn of feeling. And the horn of feeling essentially is a drinking horn. In it, it has a hole on the side where this biochemistry kind of filters into it. Another show we've spoken about the silt that can wind up in this drinking mug, and that we have a certain amount of headspace on the mug or the horn. And this certain amount of headspace, of course, is the cognitive space, critical to us managing our emotional state. Absolutely critical. Within that cognitive space is our ability to break these emotions down. I always use the analogy when the chemical composition is converting over back to energy, thinking about pouring a carbonated beverage into a glass. And we pour the drink, and then we notice that, maybe even during the pouring, we see the fizz is starting to come up in the mug, right? It's starting to come up in the glass, and it's starting to really fill the glass. Now, for those of you who may have tried this in your past, in some cases, we can lick the finger, put it in the fizz, and the fizz settles back down, right? And we continue to pour the beverage. This is a methodology at which the brain can say, whoa, 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 too much, hold on. Let's calm this down a little bit. Let's break it down to a more manageable piece. That's what the cognitive space does. If the cognitive space, for example, were to be overrun by, say, the fizz of the drink, right, or of this chemical re-energization, I guess. If the mug is overfilled, as an example, this is where you will see physiological symptoms: sweaty palms, rapid heart rate, shallow breathing, anxiety attacks, panic attacks. All of these physiological symptoms are caused when that energy recomposition overflows the horn of feeling. So we should be very cognizant, very aware of that cognitive space. It is critical, all right? It's critical for our mental health and our mental well-being, all right? So wisdom is simply that. It's simply an energy of intellect with an energy of experience connected together for an emotional state that we store in memory. So in our quest for more and more wisdom, the quest should be to experience lifetimes, to experience life fully, taking in as many of our sensory inputs as we can, to experience as much about each and every moment that we spend here in the physical realm. All right, my friends, today is Wotan's Day. We celebrate the god Wotan. Now, for those of you who have had this question, let me point out, as I've mentioned many times, particularly for the 5 weekdays, gods of my belief and my understandings. This does not mean that if you believe in, say, Yahweh or Allah or Zeus or Osiris, that these lessons can't help. That's completely incorrect. They can help. To think outside the box. Think of your God, whoever you recognize as your God. Think of them as an infinite being. There is no one way when we're speaking of infinity. No one else is wrong. Everyone else is included. Everyone else is right for them. So a super critical notion that we need to understand that just because there's certain labels and certain names does not mean that it doesn't apply kind of across the board. All right. So again, today we recognize the god Wotan, or Othin as he's later known. And we recognize his quest for wisdom in our everyday life. I hope that you will take a moment today to just kind of use that intrinsic reflection to gain wisdom based on your experiences and your intellect. Begin to build that interrelational table within the mind that helps you to have a larger, more embracive type of view of every piece of your world, every piece of your reality. If you do find that you wind up with questions, by all means, take a visit to my website, norsewhispers.com. There you can scroll all the way to the bottom, look to the left. There you go. Look to the left, and you'll see a big orange button that says Ask Me a Question. Throw them out there. Ask me questions. Let's talk about it. Let's get a dialogue going. Remember, if I do make a show about your question, I'll send you a free t-shirt. It's a free shirt you can't go wrong with. And then tonight, 6:30 Alaska time, we'll be answering a question, someone's question. Someone got a question that I felt needed to be answered in video, and we'll be sending them a shirt. So maybe that next shirt winner could be you. So be sure, norsewhispers.com. all the way to the bottom. Whoops. Look to the left, and there you'll find the big orange button that says Ask Me a Question. So I'll see you then tonight, 6:30 Alaska time, right here on New Reality TV, YouTube, Facebook, and all the others. So we look forward to seeing you there. And for Kasun Lee, thank you so much. YouTube chat. So I thank you very much for joining us in the chat. And you are 100% right. Mood is everything. So perceive your world the way it's intended. Change our moods. All right, my friends, have a wonderful Wootens Day. We will see you again this evening, where we will talk about whatever question is going to be answered. Love and light, my friends.
Watching for Felina's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska Ulf Hefnar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.